Hi, I'm Lisa Bragg, and welcome to Bragging Rights. I'm in a different location today, so a little bit rustic. I'm at my cottage or cabin, depending on where you are in the world and what language you use. So you might hear some Canadian geese squawking because they're just arriving back and they're getting pretty loud out there on the lake. So if you hear some squawking, it's the geese. So welcome to the show. We want you to join us as we have our conversation. Can't wait to tell you about who is with me today. But I wanted to say a little bit more about bragging rights as we get going, as I'm hidden away at my cottage. And that's a bit of the theme of what we're talking about today. So I'm hiding away so I can officially launch bragging rights. And I pretty much started this bragging rights journey with this show, but now it's time to really reach out into the world and share the courses I've developed, the workshops, and the other events. So that's all coming up really soon. But I started this bragging rights as a way for professional branding to help you share your value with the world and to be seen and be heard. And while many of us have supporting networks and communities, it's always a little scary when you start something new. And when you're just about to launch it, really launch it like I am, you're kind of afraid a little bit of the criticism. I don't think I'll get a backlash, but there could be a little bit of backlash as I develop this with people who don't simply like it. So joining me today is Dia Bondi, and Dia is the most awesome person at understanding and helping people through this, because her whole thing is to help people take command. And she has a lengthy bio. She's a master communicator, helping people around the world to get their stories out. But what her passion is, and I'm going to let her speak for herself, but I think her passion is really helping women to take command and smash that glass ceiling and ask for what they deserve and bring more value to the world. Oh, but one thing I want you to really do is Dia is starting a brand new podcast. It launches live today. It's called the Dia Bondi Podcast. So that's pretty easy to find in Apple, and I'll definitely add that to the show notes. So a long intro for me today, which I totally always tell people not to do. But welcome to the show, Dia. Nice to see you.
Hello, everyone in the Bragging Rights Collective. So happy to be here with you. I'm such a Bragg fan these days. And I'm taking lessons from every single conversation we have. I take lessons back to my own practice and to my own clients to help them get the credit that they have worked so hard, the things they've done that they've worked so hard on, to get the credit that they should be getting for the work that they've done.
Yeah, because we wait so long to realize that we are experts. Every time I have any sort of workshops, I feel like I have to anoint people and ordain them. You are an expert because you've put so much time into the world and you have some special stories that no one else does. And Dia, I know you have so many special stories to share with us. When you were starting your podcast, as you launch it now, are you concerned at all about criticism or backlash to it?
I mean, interestingly, I think about criticism and backlash as a thing that I'll deal with when I get there. And in the stage that I'm in right now with the podcast, where we're launching, we've got 6 episodes live and another handful in the can, which we'll be releasing twice a month, every other week for folks who subscribe. I'm really in the phase right now where I'm identifying what is this thing and what impact does it need to have so that I can stand up for it when I do get criticism and backlash. Like, if I understand what and why I'm doing, I believe that's time and energy and heart well spent, because then when I do run up against any kind of speed bump, whether it's some kind of criticism or backlash or disagreement in a way that isn't actually constructive, I know what I'm holding on to and what I might be letting go of. So right now, I'm not concerned too much about it. Ask me again in another 3 months. How about that?
Perfect. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Yes, this is what I do when I chill at the lake. I don't chill. No way. I have too many things to do in the world. Thanks. We'd love to hear from our audience. If you're out there and you'd love to talk to Dia about dealing with criticism and about, banishing those fears of asking for more. She's also the developer, the founder, the CEO of Ask Like an Auctioneer, which is an amazing program to help people to really ask. And I know we'll get into that in a second, but we want to hear from you about if you have any concerns. And Dia is also this awesome coach. She is such a great coach. So I'm sure you would do some live coaching for people if they wanted them.
If you have questions, I've got some kind of answer.
For sure. For sure. So yeah, it's having that plan and being able to stand up and saying, you know what, I know this probably hasn't been done in the world, but I'm the person to bring it to the world. But I have a plan and a vision that is part of my three-legged stool, as you could say. How do you really get that gumption though up to stand up to your critics?
I think, well, for one, and I talk about this in Project Ask Like an Auctioneer, which you mentioned already, that like I actually spend time falling in love with my goals. After I figured out what they are, I talk to them like they're my children. I spend time really falling in love with them to the point where I know that I can defend them. I'm helping them stand up to the moment, but also defend them when it's necessary. So I think falling in love with your goals and a vision for yourself is one really important component to being able to stand up to the critics, whether the critics are external or internal. It also can help you get through the hard parts when things do feel a little bit confusing. And while, yes, maybe we have a vision and a plan, sometimes our plans reshape themselves, or we find they don't work, or something folds in on itself and we have to look again at like, what is my plan now? Because what was working isn't working anymore. So it can help us look at that and redesign them in ways that are meaningful to us. So I think those two things of really falling in love with your goals and then being able to stand up for them as an outcome of that is a really huge contributing factor in almost every risk I've ever taken in my career.
And you encourage people all the time to take risks. So let's they ask like an auctioneer. Let's bring that up a little bit more while we wait for people to join us and be brave enough to jump in the conversation. But Ask Like an Auctioneer started because you took a journey into being an auctioneer. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have been a longtime leadership communications coach, and what I do mostly, and I teach workshops and do keynoting, and I take on a few one-on-one coaching clients at a time. A lot of the biggest, most important projects I've done have been coaching engagements in the events, Olympic bidding, large social impact space, where I'm helping leaders find the courage to truly speak from the heart when it really matters, when stakes are really high. billion-dollar decisions are on the line, their own reputation and leadership is on the line. And it's not just about telling a great story, it's actually being able to stand in your own skin and tell a story so it's clear what you're known for individually, but also so that it's strategically tied to the business in a way that actually moves things forward. And, I took a working sabbatical a handful of years ago and did decide to go for fun to auctioneering school. And so we went to St. Louis, and me and 100 cowboys learned how to auctioneer, anything from livestock to real estate to art. And when I was done with that, I thought, what am I doing with this? It's not a job for me. It's not a career for me. But instead, I have since brought it back to the Bay Area. And now I do fundraising auctioneering for women-led nonprofits and nonprofits that benefit women and girls, which is something really close to my heart. You and I, Lisa, are both activators in the CEO network, and we're interested in advancing women, both in their careers and in their entrepreneurial journeys. And, it hit me one night that what I'm learning in auctioneering, the way and I don't use the word negotiate much, I use the word ask. The first moment, the initial ask, is different than the conversation and negotiation that might happen after. And what I really want to point on is, what does it mean for us to ask for more and then get it as an outcome of the conversation that initial ask triggers? And one night I was falling asleep and realizing that the way we ask as auctioneers and the frameworks we use to ask courageously and directly and transactionally, dispassionately, but standing up for the missions of the organizations that I'm making asks on behalf of, is really actually exactly the opposite of the way we shape and create the logic of the asks that we do in business. And I saw in that moment that if all of the women that I work with could ask like an auctioneer and not like our regular everyday business asks, we would less often leave both money and opportunity on the table. And so I launched a project called Ask Like an Auctioneer, which has since grown and has now produced the podcast. And when I think of ask for more, I'm so excited about my project. I've lost the question here, but The idea of asking for more and getting it sort of wedged away from the conversation of negotiation is a really important thing to do, because that initial ask has to be in line with what you want, who you are, and can the way you ask like an auctioneer can challenge what you think you can get and run up against a bunch of belief systems. And half of the time you can get more than you think you actually can. And I don't mean more for the sake of itself, but ask for more of what you need in order to reach your goals.
There's so much to unpack with that, Dio, but a lot of it comes from, and we talk about critics and outside critics, and we talk about backlash. But actually, I think the stumbling point for most of us, why we stay hidden for so long, is that internal gremlin, that internal critic just keeps us small, hidden for so long. So what's a step that you help women with to start to take command of their own internal dialogue and get that monkey off their back?
Well, one thing I really learned from the world of auctioneering, which was sort of sitting in there in all my 20 years of communications coaching, but not in the same sort of sticky, fun way that we can talk about it as we borrow it from the world of auctioneering, which is, and your listeners may hate this, but is that people are irrational. I will stand in front of an audience and live auction something that I think should, that I would never pay more than $50 for. I sold a camping trip last year for a large environmental nonprofit for $55,000. Now, here's like my clients say to me all the time, we want this item to sell for this, or we want this item to sell for that at auction. And all I can say is, look, I'm going to sell it for what, like, we don't know what somebody else would buy it for. So I'm going to make an ask that is big enough, and I'm going to keep asking until I hit a no, because I can't find out what someone else will pay for. And when I say pay in the world of auctioneering, it's dollars and cents changing hands. In our careers, it's often mentorship, sponsorship, opportunities to stand on larger stages, getting championed by someone else, resources and headcount, a million other things that we ask for that help us reach our goals. So the idea inside of that is what auctioneers showed me is that my rationale, people are so irrational, meaning my rationale for what someone will say yes or no to is not their rationale for what they'll say yes or no to. So we have to stop deciding for our audiences what they'll say yes or no. We've got to ask and find out. And we shape that ask based on a truth we're telling ourselves about what we actually need to reach our goals. If you actually need 10 heads to build a team to execute against a particular strategy, not 7 because it sounds better and you think they'll go for it, and then you'll borrow some heads from the engineering team and a part-time contractor from this budget to piece it together, and meanwhile not actually able to reach your goals fast enough. When we come from a truth of like, when I'm honest with myself, what do I actually need? And then find out whether somebody will say yes or no to it. We often find out that what they'll say yes to is surprising.
Because that's the thing. We just we shop from our own wallet sometimes. So.
Beautiful way to say it, Lisa. Beautiful way to say it. So when we go to think about courage-making activities, I think about like internal courage-making things we can do to ask for more. It is exactly that. Don't shop from your own wallet, and be truthful about strategically what you actually need to reach your goals, and then anticipate, what do I think I'm going to get a no for, and aim for that, and find out that you can, then the N word comes in, the negotiation word comes in. You can negotiate from there, but that initial ask should challenge your own assumptions about what somebody would say yes or say no to.
Yes, just start going for no. Just keep going and keep going. So if you're watching, we'd love for you to join our conversation. So we're talking about critics, we're talking about command, we're talking about banishing your critics and the backlash that sometimes you might get. And we want to see you really grow in where you are. So if you'd like to jump on and put something in the chat, we know you're watching. I can see some of the numbers there. So come join us and play and continue the conversation. But Dia, you have really you really want people to take command. That's your new language lately that you're using. How did you land on taking command? It's so strong. It's not fluffy. It's really take command.
One of my old mentors said, it's really important for you to understand if you work in leverage points or in layers. And I work in leverage points. And I don't work often with folks who don't have a situation at hand where stakes are really high. And where I love to work is helping folks be in command when they have a situation at hand where the stakes are really high. And that is, to me, if you can, when those stakes are really high, at those critical moments, figure out how to be in command, then you can change everything. And I'm just interested in those pressure cooker moments because they reveal a lot about who we are and what matters to us. And we can use them to create a platform that you can stand on for finding the courage to speak from the heart, for taking control in that moment and actually getting very clear about what you want to impact and what you don't, it doesn't matter that you impact. So these are clarity making moments. And I like to work in that context because if you can have command there, you can unlock a lot in your business life and career.
I find a lot of people, it's helpful when we do our coaching that we give them some sort of script to deal with some of these things. So dealing with the criticism that might come up when you do any of these asks, that you have already some sort of comeback, something in your back pocket ready to go. I think it just gives us a little bit more confidence. How do you prepare your people? Do you give them a little bit of something, some sort of script for them to say, if this, then that, or what do you do?
It's interesting that you bring that up, Lisa, because you and I have talked about actually building something like that for your audience and for mine, because it is having that language is really powerful. And it's funny, I'm so situational that sometimes I don't have like ones that are in the back of my head all the time. They're very much like, what's going on for you right now? And the one that's been really powerful for me in my own business is to know what my ask is, know where my negotiation points are, and know what my minimum is when I go into an ask, a negotiation, and an agreement, and to make sure that I'm never framing myself. And I know I'm not giving you words, but more of an idea that I'm never framing myself as discounted, going on sale, doing something for less, but instead that I honor my full self in every single negotiation I do, even if we are negotiating down toward a lower number or lower level of engagement or a lower grade of a partnership, et cetera. And so, I often use the phrase, I think maybe you've even heard me say it, that like, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't go on sale, but I'm happy to reduce scope. Now, for those of you who are, independent professionals, independent designers, independent consultants or small business owners, this can be really, and I think especially as women, that we don't put a discount tag on our blouse is really critical, but we instead, we can make it more affordable for you if we take something off the table for ourselves. Now, that comes from a place of generosity for ourselves and honesty in the negotiation. It's not about withholding. It's about protecting our own time, energy, and expertise, and also meeting the client need. So I'm not saying I can't not do it often. I'm saying I can do something for that. It's not going to look like what I originally proposed.
I think it's too realizing nowadays that if they don't value you, then you shouldn't be working with them. I think that's what it is, where if the criticism back to you, because I think a lot of people go in thinking, well, I want X amount of dollars. And when they say, oh, that's too much, we take it personally, like you.
Yeah, we hear you're too much is what we hear.
That's entirely what we hear. But we're actually need to say, well, that number is out of their budget. And how can we work then to a number or a situation that is going to work for both sides? And so that's where I think we get that it's adversarial in the negotiation or in the ask.
What I notice also is that, there's this idea in auctioneering of being an agent. You're not an agent for the seller. You're not an agent for the buyer. Now, everyone listening's got to understand, I don't do auctioneering, 100 times a year. I do it, well, before COVID, I did it a bunch more, 10 or 12 times a year. This year, I've got 2 on deck. So this has been this interesting what I call an impact hobby, that I can draw all these language and concepts from and generalize it across our businesses and careers in a way that's really fun and sticky. And this idea of being an agent for the buyer and for the seller, but not for me, we can also apply in these moments when we're asking on behalf of our own goals and dreams. That I don't need this money. This goal needs this money. I'm not asking for those resources. This goal needs those resources, or we will be sabotaging it. So you are being an agent for your dreams and your goals. And I have found that framing can also be very courage making and a little bit more durable in the face of a counter offer if we really think of being an agent for our dream goal strategy, and that we are taking some space from the ask and from ourselves. We're like separating those.
Yeah, giving some breath to all of it. And I like the agent part so that it just distances again. If you're watching, we'd love to hear from you. We usually get some more interaction. So I know if you're going to watch the replay, which I'm sure people are, put some comments in there and we'll definitely come back and respond to them at a later date whenever you join in the conversation. Dia, I think people are probably thinking, oh, that's nice, but what do I do when the person who's my boss or the person who would be typically in my cubicle next to me says, gives me that criticism about me wanting to go for that next promotion or leave corporate for the entrepreneurial life because they love what we're doing. How do you think, any advice on dealing with that as you take some baby steps out into trying something new?
Well, I think, I've come from a place of, yes, charging language and command, but also of empathy and generosity, and to not make other people wrong for expressing the fears that they have about change onto us and the changes that we might be able to make. I taught a class not long ago, and Lisa, I hope this touches your question, taught a class not long ago for a large tech brand that many of you have probably right on your desktop right now. It was a cohort of women as part of a development program they were doing for sort of mid-level folks there. And we were talking about the actual, I don't know if you'd call this backlash, but the outcome that of like actually getting what you want in an ask, a negotiation, and an agreement. A woman raised her hand in the session and said, so here's a weird thing. I actually got what I wanted and I paid for it when I got here. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, I negotiated hard for myself. I asked big, I negotiated hard, and I got what I wanted, and that got out. So as soon as I showed up in my team, it wasn't long before I was getting a lot of like elbows to the ribs a little gently about, well, I heard you're a real tough, negotiator. I heard you really, kind of these backhanded compliments that felt like these weird little microaggressions in the workspace. And she was feeling a need to sort of apologize for it or downplay it or make it like not that big of a deal. And what we ended up landing on in the conversation was, how does she reframe it as actually so she could own that? She could take command of that reputation and say, instead of apologizing, to be able to stand in her truth and say, you know what, it's true, I'm a pretty good negotiator. If you need any help with your upcoming contracts, let me know. She was in a legal function. So to turn something to be able to, flipping scripts is something I love to do.
Yeah,
so we're not saying, no, I'm not. No, I'm not a tough nigga. We're not pushing up against it to say no. We're saying yes. And I'd love to, I am an asset for you. If you have goals that need a tough negotiator and you find you want some advice, you know where to find me.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Catherine's joining us and she says she loves that the goal needs this. And that's that separating it a little bit from yourself. So thanks for joining, Catherine. If you're watching, join us, whatever. Dia's offering us all these scripts. She's not saying them right away, but she's actually offering them. If you want to write them in for the next person so they can hear them, because she's offering up so many great things. Like, I don't go on sale. Do you see on sale on me?
Yeah, I don't go on sale. Excuse me. I don't know. There's no red tag sale happening here.
No red tag, but I'll negotiate. I'll figure out something. Let's work together on it for sure. Yeah. I love that. But there's so many good points in all of that. And it's having the courage to get going and start and taking those steps and action. I think so many people are waiting for the confidence before they get going on anything because they want to make sure that they have the armor, but it's not that. It's taking the steps forward.
It is. And this is because, in 20 years of communications coaching for high stakes moments, for leaders who are right on the verge of a level up or have just leveled up and have to get it right in front of a room, not from a technical perspective, but from a real connection and delivering in a way that is in aligned with who they are way, we find over and over again that if they wait until that, confidence is actually an outcome of action, not a prerequisite. And it's the same here. You get better at asking for what you really need and want. You get better at standing up for your dreams. You build confidence as a result of doing it. So you might not, so what does it mean for you listening to instead expect yourself not to have confidence, but to have a plan? If you've got a plan, then if you make an ask or you step out, in front of an audience that's new for you, you can run the scenarios of what might happen and have a plan. And that might be enough to get you into action, which will then produce confidence that you can roll into your next critical moment.
And it gives you the confidence that you can make a mistake and land on your feet. You can fail and an outcome could be good because of that failure. You can fail and then quickly realize, oh, that didn't turn out the way I thought it would, but here's a great outcome because of it. So it's again, that reframe of how do you turn something that didn't work out to, I'm a scientist and I'm experimenting to see what's going to work and what isn't. And even when you tell people, I'm trying this out today, people often are willing to let you make mistakes. And one of my friends was talking about the pratfall effect. And so that's where you can make mistakes and people like you sometimes even more than if we're perfect all the time, that people just don't like perfection. They want to see us real, humans, authentic, that kind of experience. So I don't know who it is, but Flipping the Script, awesome. Thank you for joining us. I can't see your name on here, but thanks for joining in. Would love to hear from you in the audience if anything else that Dia is saying is resonating. Because whenever Dia speaks, it's like, that's another gem for me. That's another gem to help me stop being hidden and really get my big, hairy, audacious goals, if you're following Jim Collins, out there in the world. And Dia, I know one of your goals is to help 20 million women to achieve their goals.
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to also go back to this idea of like flipping the script we have in the comments here that, anytime I hear a client or somebody in my workshop shares with me an idea that bumps them, like, ooh, it's got that. I'm not, the first thing I ask is like, how can we flip that script? If we flipped the script on that, what would that sound like? And then to play it, you talk about how useful scripts can be, then to play that script and ask, is that helpful? Is that confidence building? Is that courage making for you? Is that an invitation to act? Does that make it possible for you to say yes to the next step? And if it does, we know we've won in that moment. So anytime you get bumped and something that makes you want to go backwards, get small, step off stage, get out of the spotlight, feel criticized, if you can ask yourself, if I were to flip that script, how might I do that? And see if that's actually helpful, the answer that you come up with. So yes. And to the earlier comment, also, Lisa, sorry, I'm on a rant here. When Catherine said to be focused on what the goal needs, I talk a lot. So the Bondi Show, our new podcast, which is a big podcast for women with goals, whatever kind of goals you have, flashy goals, private goals, adventure goals, business goals, career goals, whatever. I talk about it in the context of helping women ask for more and get it, whatever the it is, and to be able to resource their dreams so we can reach our goals faster. And resourcing our dreams, I think of as like, if our dream is a bank account, we're filling it up with what it needs to get to a certain place. It's not us. So yes, I do have 20 million would be amazing. But my first more humble goal is 1 million, getting 1 million women to ask for more and get it, resource their dreams so they can reach their goals faster. But 20 million, I think, is the very next goal.
I think you're going to get it. I think you're just going to keep ramping it up. And I know people who are listening are going to start to follow you on all the other things. So Dia just launched a new podcast. It's called The Dia Bondi Show. So that should be easy for you to find. And I will add it to the show notes. She's also the founder and the brains behind Ask Like an Auctioneer too. So, and I'll put all of her how to contact Dia so you can start following her and share all of her genius as she helps us all to take command in the world. I think one thing I hear a lot about when people, because I talk about content a lot and, having a story bank and getting your stories out there and being brave to go on Clubhouse and come up to the stage or even put a comment in here. Like, this is a very simple way to get your own brand out there, is by interacting on these kind of platforms and just putting a comment in, especially for the introverts. But so many people are still afraid that if it's on their own content or something like here, that someone won't like it and some troll or someone will put something on there and that just crushes them so quickly. Any thoughts on, I have all my thoughts on it, but how do you help people? Any thoughts on flipping the script on that when a troll comes along and says something? Do you just ignore it, or do you say something, or does it just depend?
So I like this concept of going around, where we don't have to get in a fight. We don't have to stop. We don't have to stop and figure out what to do with you. We can instead just go around. And in that way, we take the power out of those moments to just, I don't want to say ignore, because you notice it, but just to go around. You get to keep moving forward. You get to. And you may have some obstacles. You may be doing a little slaloming, in there, but you get to go around to keep going, and keeping your eyes on the horizon makes a huge difference. So for me, again, it goes back to falling in love with your goals and then recognizing those speed bumps along the way, and going around can take the power out and the sting out of those moments where somebody wants to stop you in your tracks. They want to sting you. So instead you can just, I'm sorry, let's go around. Excuse me while I go around. And it just cools everything down and lets you keep going.
Yeah. Because you don't have to respond. There's no reason to it. You just keep going in your own lane, and then you'll attract the right people that are supposed to hear your message. So maybe that troll isn't supposed to hear your message. Don't let that one person sidetrack you. It's really, there's probably 99 other people who are really interested. And even if 99 other people don't care, this is that Lady Gaga thing where 99 people don't care about her, but that one person does. You're one person that you could be changing their life and making the difference. And one person out of 100 in this world is actually a lot of people. So just keep going and not worry about those negative comments, or if you don't get any likes on it too. I think that's part of it, that people take that as a criticism, and it's not. It's just that people are really busy doing their own thing and often in their own heads. So that's part of it.
The piece of that too, for me, is that there's so much language right now in the world about, get what you're worth, get paid what you're worth, ask for what you're worth. And I want folks to do that. It can also be a trap where every response we get to the asks or requests and the things we put out into the world becomes, I'm going to ask for what I'm worth. I'm going to post something that I think is worthy. And then if nobody responds, if I don't get the counter offer that I want, if I don't get the engagement that I want in the way that I want it, then, well, I must not be worth that then. So I don't like the language of worth around how we resource our dreams and gather folks around what we're trying to create in the world, whether it's a team at your job, or it's a creative project that you're launching that needs collaboration from the industry, or a partner you want to bring on for a particular project, or a brand partnership, whatever the thing is. I don't like the idea of get what you're worth, ask for what you're worth, I don't even like get what you deserve. We can talk about that in a second. But the idea instead is to say, is this worth it to me? Yeah. Because that is flipping the script. That we cannot say, am I worth what they're saying I'm worth? But instead to say, like, is the counter offer I'm getting, the comment I'm getting back on my idea, is it worth it to me to say yes to engaging in it? Or is it to say, thank you very much for your time, energy, resources, words, go around? So again, flipping that script as often as we can so that we cannot undermine our own momentum.
Yeah. Karen, you nailed it. I see that was Karen Horton who said flipping the script. Yes, she nailed it. That's one of the critical points, is flip that script. So when you come up against that criticism or that backlash, flip the script. You had one more point that you wanted to make, though, in that comment. What was it? Oh, Dia, there's so many things that we could say. I know you want people to go to your podcast. What's your podcast about besides all of your awesome genius coming out and that you share with the world in your awesome Here I Am style? What's it about though?
I love it that you call it the Here I Am style. And actually, that's sort of why we called it the Dia Bondi Show, sort of a personal challenge, which I will say a friend and colleague called me forth about put myself out there style there. And so we called it the Dia Bondi Show, a big podcast for women with goals. And I will tell the story around that in a few episodes down the road, I'm sure. So the podcast is built to help women ask for more and get it, resource their dreams so that they can reach their goals faster. It is part expert perspective and it is part call-in show, actually. So folks can call and leave a voicemail at our podcast phone number and around a critical move that you have coming up. If the stakes are high and you're going to step into a situation where it can go this way or that, and you want some ideas on how to handle it and how to stay in your truth and how to take command in that moment, you can leave that question on that voicemail and we will workshop it on the show. Now, the note about expert perspectives is, because I've been in a B2B context for so long, I've had the privilege of working with across disciplines, for the last 20 years in my coaching work. I have just an unbelievable bank of folks to draw on that have ways of staying in and keeping command when stakes are really high. And so we'll feature those expert perspectives on the show, and they may or may not be people you've heard of, but they may or may not be people you should be listening to as a source of courage for your own strategies.
Dia, that sounds amazing. Okay, we'll definitely put it in the notes. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks for joining us on Bragging Rights. Just talk to you soon.